may just skip slides or something, get through all of it and try to answer all the questions. Okay, my little lady's not telling me that you're recording now. It's really blinking up there, so I think we're recording. Okay, we need to go to, here we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This, I mean, look, I kind of did this disclaimer at each class. I think hopefully it's getting better for each group. But I think one of my favorite things about this chapter is probably because this is personal, a little personal story here. I love all y'all. I'm not judging anybody. I don't want to judge anybody. I think we need to love everybody, right? Love your neighbor yourself. But I do go to church. I try to be a Christian, try to be a religious person. And I think a lot of times in the past, I had people in here that were preachers and they got really ugly during this chapter. Okay, they were like go crazy on this chapter and the chapter we did last semester about how the first self came about, and like it was offending them. Okay, and so I am never trying to hurt anybody's feelings. That's not who I'm about. Okay, so I always make a little joke here. If something in this chapter makes you struggle with your religion or question something about your faith, then you need to go check your faith. Okay, don't get mad at me. I've never seen anything in these books that really bothered me. Okay, now I'll tell you what would bother me though. If we read this chapter and it said that life started in cold water bottom, and it said that would disturb me because there's no mention of cold water bottom in the Bible. Matter of fact, there's no mention of this continent in the Bible, right? But what it does say is that Adam and Eve was in this place called Garden of Eden, right? And where do y'all think that might be? Okay, now where did the Jewish people live? In that part of the country, and what's just south of the Holy Land? Northern Africa. And guess where the oldest fossils of anything vaguely human have ever been found? Northern Africa. Now I find solace in that, right? The science is not telling me one thing and God tells me something different, right? So I kind of see kind of a merging here instead of a divergence here. Okay. And as we looked at that, as we spent the last couple of weeks looking at the evolution of life, God didn't make man on the first day. He made man on the last day of the evolution, right? Now, did he need to give them this book a million years ago? No, and they would understand it, right? But y'all been through high school and understand basic concepts of science and stuff, right? But that little Genesis chapter 1, 2, 3 is pretty interesting because that's exactly the sequence that we see of these plants and animals we looked at. Life started in the water and it came on the land, and we come around here real recently. That's pretty cool. And so one of the things really cool in this chapter 2 is we're going to see some of these missing links. So how we got it. So I'm just trying to make this fun. But don't be frustrated if it's something that you I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but some people seem to get upset about this stuff, and I don't have a problem with that. I always tell this I told this story today, but a lot of times that origin of life, those are hypotheses. There's no proof of that, right? To get scientific proof, we need to repeat the experiment, right? So these are just the smartest people's guesses. I used to have my Star Wars theory, right? I love the one in when the Return of the Jedi, when they latch on to the Death Star. I mean, not the Death Star, but one of the big ships. They're trying to chase them, and then right when they all go to warp speed, they dump the crash, and then he let the Millennium Falcon fall down like it was trash. So we could be evolved from the poop that somebody dumped the porta pot, right? You know, like they come down here, check out everything that's here, that's dump our trash, something wrong. And then we evolved 50 million years later into humans. Who knows? Okay. But I like to think God has something to do with it personally. Okay. But I don't have any proof of that. I just have faith for that. Okay. But as we look at this, I see a lot of convergence in some of this. So don't go freaking out when I talk about our relatives today. Okay. Now, in the last 20 years, though, with the DNA fingerprinting, look, we put people to death in court with this. So if it's good enough to put somebody to death, it's good enough to say I'm kin to a freaking tree. Okay. And just deal with it, okay? Don't be mean. And they don't have to feel it. They don't feel it when you mow the yard. They're not like, I'm getting chopped off at the knees, right? Okay, they don't feel it because plants don't have a nervous system, right? Anyway, so as we do, I just find this kind of a fun chapter. All right, so the first thing he talks about is, and look, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but look at this. This is a cool picture of the fossil record of primates. Okay, so here, long story short, we're going to kind of cut to it and kind of get to it. We think the best we can guess, based on what we can tell in the fossil record, and the fact that there are no humans past, 50, 60,000 years. Okay, We do not find humans with these 3.8 million year old fossils of bacteria. We come along later, okay? And that is pretty well factual in the fossil record. The first primate was this little shrew that looked like kind of like a little rat that would live in a tree. Okay, and it pops up about 63 million years ago. Actually, that's before that. The lemur is the first primate, and it appeared 64 million years ago in the fossil record. So as we go up this, check it out. So these prosimians and these tarsals, they appeared a little bit later at like 58 million years ago. These were the first ones. And so the first question on there is, what would these little creatures need to adapt in order to live in a tree? What would give them an advantage? And that's that first question, and we'll go back and look at those. But, you know, like not having a hoof in a tree ain't working. Fingers, thumb, hold on to limbs, so things like that, vision evolved. Then we had the evolution of the New World monkeys, and they first appeared around, what is that, 45 million years ago. And New World monkey means South America. The New World, exploration, that was the explorers in the 1600s, 1700s went and discovered North and South America. So these are monkeys we see in South America. Old world monkeys would be Asian and African monkeys, right? Okay, that was the old world, because that's where we come from. They appear here, and then we get down to gibbons appearing 15 million years ago, orangutans a little bit sooner, then gorillas, and then chimpanzees, and then humans. So if you look at this, everybody here up is an arthropod, everybody from here up is a hominid, and I can't even halfway know how to pronounce it. HOMINOIDS, not to be confused with throw another IN in there. These people are smoking crack naming this stuff, okay? Hominids, okay, whatever, which is going to be orangutan enough, and then the hominids, which is the gorilla enough, and then they got one for just us and our direct descendants, okay? And that's the HOMININ without the ES. Not a lot of that on the test, okay? Just look it up and just put down what's on the book, or if I ask that on the question. But this is the deal. This is the fossil record does this. And we also know that we share genes with these different critters. So we are their descendants, or at least we have a common ancestry, right? Okay, so what would those characteristics be real quick? We'll just real quick look at some of these, and there's some cool pictures there. Mobile forelimbs and hind limbs, grasping hands, flattened face, stereoscopic vision, 2 eyes. This is something people don't realize. But if you only have 1 eye, and you're pulling out in traffic, you're going to be not as good as predicting how fast that car coming at you is if you have 2 eyes. Because it hits 1 eye quicker than another, and your brain can calculate that speed a little bit. I actually had a boy in my class when you were a guy, I don't really try to find him. But you remember when y'all were kids and you wanted a BB gun and you didn't get one because that kid, shot his eye with a BB gun, supposedly that phantom urban legend. This kid got the Red Ryder, went outside, pumped it, shot it into the house brick, and put his left eye out. He is that kid. He is why you didn't get a Red Ryder. Okay, that's why you didn't get a BB gun. Okay, so he had a fake eye, and then so he told the class, and we had a lot of fun with that. He had one real eye. Okay, and then we see a more complex brain. So as we go up that tree of us toward us, the brain's going to get bigger because you're going to have more ability to control the body and to think, and et cetera, et cetera. And we see a reduced rate in reproduction. Here's some color pictures of these. There's the tarp. There they are. I love this. And here's the humans family. I love that. Come, throw them in there, right? Chimpanzees. Now we will say though, the chimpanzee is our closest relative, and the DNA is proving that. We're only 1.5% difference between us and them. And it looks like they have 48 chromosomes. We have 46, and one of our pairs is actually 2 of theirs stuck together. So we know which 2 chromosomes come together to make our number 2. So we're just real close to those guys, okay? And a lot of it has to do with the language genes that they don't have and some of the other ones, okay? So this is just talking about all this. Opposable thumb is a big deal, okay? Look at the hands. Having these thumb is such a big deal. Having this long thumb lets you really manipulate things and make tools and do things, and that's an advantage. Depth perception with the stereoscopic eye, bigger brain, okay? And then we're going to see the evolution of look at that, extended lifespan, and we have children, have low numbers of babies, and they stay around for a long time. Some of y'all are going to live at your mother's house till you're 30. It's awesome, man. I never understood why somebody get out of college and go get your own apartment. That's just throwing money away, right? And you have to buy all that food. You can go home and stay in your own room and eat free food for a year or two and save up money, right? That's what I advise people to do. Okay, and then we'll break them down here. So there's the hominids, and that's the last 5 million years, and that's the humans and his direct descendants. But we've only been around Homo sapiens just a little while, maybe 50,000 years, I believe. Then we got the hominids and the arthropods and all that. Okay, prosimians. But I keep going back to this picture. Okay, so I think we kind of answered one. The chromosome question is coming up. They're going to talk about that in just a second. We'll just kind of go through the PowerPoint here. Here's where that chimpanzee study was found. That Yale University recently showed that the human chromosome 2 is 2 different chromosomes of the chimpanzee fused together. A translocation that didn't go right. And so that is what we think separates us from chimpanzees. And the DNA is only 1.5% different. I will tell you, I'm a big sci-fi fan. I love the Planet of the Apes movies, right? I love the remake, right, where they use some kind of retrovirus to give them intelligence, right? Dude, that could happen, man. Okay, so we just got a couple of genes, in there to give them language and all that could be really quite interesting. Okay, how that could play out. So that is not out of the realm of possibility. You got to think. There's the chromosomes stuck together, fusing that. I thought that's pretty cool. And the big thing we look at are these skulls, and in forensics biology, we can look at these bones and tell a lot. Like, for example, one of the characteristics of the higher animal primates is this bipedalism, us walking up like this. This puts weight on the femur that we can tell by looking at the femur and the coxal, that's the hip. The acetabulum is the hip socket, and we can look at that and tell how much, if that person walked upright or not. And so we're sure these guys walked upright, and that's a big deal. Okay. And I think, and here's what I like is the skulls. Look at that. So here's some skulls laid out. This is actually looking at that last group of just us and our descendants, our most recent kinfolk. And so notice that Homo sapien don't come around to what? This is 500,000 years. That's about 50, maybe 50, 60,000 years. He does, and I actually know, not a Mater's passed away, but the guy that's actually picked this book up is Weinstein or whatever. He's come and spoken to our building. Really nice guy. But he makes a cool part in the chapter saying that there's possibility that about 70,000 years ago that 4 or 5 Homo genus or living organisms were all on Earth at the same time. So we were here, Homo sapien, and then Homo Neanderthal, and then this Heliobergus, Homo erectus, and maybe the Cro-Magnon. And the Cro-Magnon would be in there too. And we could have had some kind of race war already. We won. Okay, Homo sapien won. And one of the things the book says I didn't know about is that they now find Neanderthal genes in people of European and Asian descent, but not in people of African descent. So there's a thought that the Homo sapiens may have inbred with the Neanderthals, and then some of those genes stay even with some of us today. Now, Neanderthals might have been the Vikings, big tall people, and they even had bigger brains than we did, than we do, but they died out. Interesting stuff. But look at this. As you go back over here to the very first one, these have very small skulls, okay? And we'll see a skeleton of that one in just a minute. And obviously, some of these died out. But we think this is kind of where we think something like this. We kind of come from this line. Is the current theory. We won't know for sure, right? So until I guess God tells us, right? I'm sure there'll be a class in heaven, like how I made humans, it's a 50-year course. If that's interesting, right? I mean, join me. We'll see you there. Okay, we'll take that one because we're gonna have forever anyway. Might as well learn some stuff, right? Okay. Thought that'd be kind of fun. But look at the skull. Look at ours versus Homo habilis, Africanus, Australopithecus, Africanus, and Alpharnus, and then this Remnus. Okay, so it is evolving to a human. Okay, to our human skull. All right, we'll look at some of the interesting stuff as we go through this real quick, but I'll keep referring back to this one. Okay, here is a human skeleton compared to the Australopithecus right here. Where you at? This guy right here. So I believe this one right here is one that they named Arda, A-R-I-D-I, I guess, or Ardia, or whatever. But look, she's quite a bit shorter than us, right? But look at that green, it's a red hair out. They can look at that femur bone and the tibia fibula and see that it won't direct. And it had the, the spinal exit from the center of the skull was a big deal. It had opposable toes, indicating they still lived in trees. Well, we don't have it like that. Look how the toes are a little bit different than ours. Okay. We'll just kind of run through some of these so that we do think that these hominids evolved out of Africa, okay? And I think that's pretty cool, man. So that's where we think life started for humans. We had these branches here 5.6 million years ago, 4.4. These were the size of chimpanzees, had small head, small brain, very small brain. They did walk erect, but they spent most of their time in the trees. Okay, and they had, some of the skeletons that tells us what they could do. We did have a really cool one here, Oscopithecus. We did have a good skeleton of this one. We know that they were, this is another group here, just going on a bit closer to us. We have a skeleton named Lucy that was real famous, discovered in 1963, and the people were big Beatles fans. They named it the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And here, and they don't put the picture of her, but here is a computer generation of what she looked like. So this is based on the skeleton. So she was real hairy, very smaller than us. So this is a reconstruction of Lucy that's on display at St. Louis Zoo. And she was around 3.7 million years old. But we also have this, in the same area where we found her, we found these footprints. This was like a sandy river creek bed that a volcano blew up and filled it with lava real quickly. So it basically made an imprint, kind of like y'all seen the Bigfoot hunters with the imprints of them. It made a permanent imprint. And what you can see here is two adults with a little baby walking with them. And there's a point in this footprint where they stop, they pivot, maybe the volcano blew, like woohoo, and then they haul butt. Okay, then they run. Which is kind of some type of intelligence, right? But anyway, we know from that and the study of the bones that they did walk upright. Okay. And obviously the brain is nowhere near the size of ours. Okay. They even had more of an animal nose. Okay. And we kind of think they probably still lived in the trees sometimes, could climb in a tree. But then we get to Homo habilis, and these guys, this term handyman, and these guys were the first ones to make stone tools. We see a lot of tools in here. They would, and this goes back to my childhood. I was raised on a farm in Lee County, and we lived in that Chickasaw Indian village from Pontotoc over there. It was huge Indians. So we farmed, and we cut a field, and it would rain like it did yesterday Monday. You go back out there, there's the Indian rock laying up the field. So instead of going in there and grinding them over again and breaking them, we would go pick them up a lot now. So one of my hobbies is pick up Indian rock. I have some of the skinners that they use to pull the fat off of the hide. It'd be a perfect little stone, and you can see where they had their fingers on it because it wore through, and there was a spot, and then the bottom of it was smooth as this surface, where they would scrape that fat off. And then, of course, I find bird points for arrows and then spear points a lot. So I found some bones in one of our fields. But anyway, pretty cool. They had social organization. They were scavengers. They were not a big deal in our evolution. Was probably the domestication of plants. Once we started farming, that's when things really blew up, right? Because then you have to spend all your day looking for food. You can have things like culture, and you can start to draw pictures on the wall, and there's a pictograph. I actually have a minor in anthropology. When I got to Ole Miss from community college, they wanted me to take like 12 hours of chemistry, and I already had like 18 hours of chemistry per minor, and I wasn't going to do that. So I just went over to archaeology and got to 24 hours of Indiana Jones stuff. Okay, like courses on the different Indians and stuff, and I really found that really impressive. And actually did an Indian dig one summer when we spent a whole month on a archaeological site, and we dug up the Indians that were where they wanted to put a nuclear power plant up in Iuka, that they never did. But they paid, I was like, I don't know, my professor probably $70,000 to come up there and excavate it for a month. Because if you're digging up, if you put a house, if we put that corporate building in the auditorium, and they dug up a body, then this federal law is you have to have archaeologists check it out and verify who this was, because you may be interfering with the grave site, of the Indians, and that's not good. Okay, and the paperwork to move a body. Okay. Anyway, but kind of cool. So they had the larger brain than that, and then Lucy and the other one, and they were also meat eaters and planters. They're omnivores like us. They could eat either. And then we have this Homo erectus that we think came out of Africa. Now this is where it gets real big argument. And I got one of my questions here, and I think I'll answer your question. There's two theories on this. One of them is called the replacement model. Explained the replacement model, also called out of Africa. Okay, and then there's another one this is the one that we think this 90% of people agree with this one. This replacement out of Africa is that the Homo erectus walked out of Africa and became the Europeans and the Chinese and the Asians, and then later on another group came out of Africa and knocked them out. Okay, in other words, like there might have been two waves. Okay, but the other theory is that humans evolved on their own in Asia, Europe, and Africa. And we just don't think that's true. Most people don't believe that because DNA just tells us that we're all kin to that. And we actually look at mitochondrial DNA, and they can look for changes in that mitochondrial DNA, and the most unchanged mitochondrial DNA is in Africa. And so this is a lot of evidence here suggesting we come out of Africa. And I don't know. Look, my question is, we don't know how Hawaii got there. Don't even ask. We don't know what's up there. Has anybody been to Hawaii? That is a long way from land. You could not boat paddle to Hawaii. So I think it's fascinating. We don't know how they got there. But we do know that the North American and South American Indians came across Alaska and walked down and made it filled up, Canada, United States, and then Mexico, all the way down to the tip, down to Argentina, wherever. Okay, so we do thought that so these were taller than the previous hominids. First one to use fire. We actually found a fire pit where they made the fire in the village that we were doing over in Corinth. I mean, not Corinth, outside Iuka. And of course, they walked direct mainly. Here is a skeleton from that period of 1.6 million years ago. And that's a pretty good skeleton, right? So you can actually tell what these things look like, and computers can actually tell the face of these now. Most researchers believe the Homo sapiens evolved out of the Homo erectus. The African hypothesis replacement model says that the Homo sapiens evolved from the Homo erectus only in Africa and therefore migrated to Europe. That's supported by fossil record and DNA. This other theory is called multi-regional continuity, where they all evolved separately in those three places. Because we got the three big civilizations of the time: Africa, China, Europe, right? So those are the three, okay, that we look at, that we know that's where our modern man came from. However, we did have all the land masses that together in about 1.85 million years ago. So it's possible that some of these early not quite humans went to each of these land masses, and then as they spread out, the Aborigines of Australia would have been on Australia, and maybe the Hawaiians were on the island that became Hawaii. I don't know. Okay, but we think that's kind of what happened here, because we know all the land masses were together back when this was called Pangea. And they're still moving, too. And come on, everybody, when y'all first saw the globe, did y'all not see how North America and South America fit right into Africa and Europe? I mean, that's obvious, like it fits like a jigsaw puzzle, because they were all together at one time. Okay, so transition to modern humans, population of Homo erectus presided until about 100,000 years ago. Now here's a side path that drives me crazy. This is only found like 10 or 15 years ago. These Homo florestinians. This is an island in Europe. So they found these miniature people. I'm just telling you, it's crazy. So they got like the little miniature people, the little miniature horses, the little miniature elephants. Nobody knows. It's just like this. The people trying to do this stuff like pulling their hair out. Okay, like this is how it's crazy. So if you read the little section of the book, it just says like, man, we don't know. We just think some of these early primitive got stuck on this island and they just never grow. They just somehow that's all they became. And that ended. I mean, they're not our dwarf people today. We know what causes that. Look at that. Erectus disappeared from Africa about 500,000 years ago by this Helio Bergensen, and that is the one we think that's probably our most recent, was our modern man came from that. 80,000 years ago, remains found in the South Pacific island of Flores in the 24/4. That really freaked us out with 80,000-year-old fossils there. The size of the brains getting bigger as we get to Homo sapiens, but the Neanderthal having a bigger brain than us. Here's that florestans that existed as Homo sapiens evolved and spread across Africa, maybe Europe and Asia, but went extinct near the time the Homo sapiens would reach the Florins. And those are those miniature people, which we don't know what that was about. All right. But moving on, see what we got here. Clear divide line has not been found between the erectus and that Homo Bergenstein's fossils that started appearing 600,000 years ago. We think that they went along and we came from that. Nothing much here. Modern humans have DNA from all three lineages. So some of our cultural people have from all three of those different groups. So we're not sure about that, but we do know, like I said, I thought it was kind of cool that the Neanderthal are found in the European people and Asian people. Between 102,000 years ago, there may have been at least 5 human lineages at one time on Earth. That's pretty wild. And so this is what the thought is that these came out of Africa very, million years ago, and then over time they had a little thing going. Maybe the Neanderthal was this one, and then the second wave came out of Africa and took everybody else out, or at least became the dominant. Don't know. We just don't know. Here's the Neanderthal, bigger brain. Date back to 20,000 years ago, and they disappeared about what it says here, a few minutes. Bigger than us, heavier muscles, bigger brain to handle all that muscle, constructed shelter, made tools, hunted, used fire, and then disappeared. Okay. It talks about some more random stuff here they found. Okay, nothing much there. Then when Neanderthals may have descended from first wave of the Helio Bergensteins migrating north from Africa, we just don't know. Then the Cro-Magnon came along a little bit after them, and that's another one that has advanced tools, language. These guys, both these guys buried their dead with flowers and tools for the next life. So they were already having some type of religion. It's kind of wild when you think about it. Collect the food for the environment rather than domesticating animals and growing plants. And it would be the next group that actually domesticated plants. And we had language, art, and cave painting. I actually love this. I actually went on it, and this is one of my little phones here, just have a minute of fun here. But one year, I don't know, I've been pretty active in my church, I'm involved, but one year, I don't know, I didn't get involved in the BBS. And y'all know what I'm talking about, Vacation Bible School? And so once I come up with my little girl to our BBS, and I walk in our church, and they got dinosaurs everywhere. Like little cut out dinosaurs with little cavemen standing by. And I come in glee. And I listen to these guys do their talk, and they talk about dinosaurs, and I'm like, okay, call me crazy. But I did my dad's baptism on my church cross. I've got Methodist friends, right? I got Catholic friends, but I had never heard of dinosaurs for BBS. BBS is usually something to do with Bible. The flood, Noah, that's a famous one, right? Something about Jesus is always good. So I was like, we didn't walk dinosaurs, dude. There's no, I mean, we're pretty sure that they died 60 million years ago. We ain't been here for like 200,000 years. And if we did walk dinosaurs, I'm cool with that. Just prove it, right? Find me a T-Rex with a human in it, and I'll go back and apologize to everybody for the talk. So I can only go with what science is showing, right? And we're like 50 million years off on that guess. And so I went to some of my leadership. I said, hey guys, I love y'all, but we don't need to be doing BBS. Ain't got anything to do with the Bible. I mean, we can't kind of need to make it because we're a church. And they agreed. I said, because y'all realize we didn't want to know, so these guys are wrong. Okay. And that's where we're at. So, but one of their, in their talk, though, they talked about the spectrograph in Utah. And so I was out there on one of my trips. I like to go out and explore this place. I actually go down, climb down a rope ladder to see this one. Okay. I'll show you a picture. I got it all. I'll bring it. I do show and tell. But they claimed it was a person riding a dinosaur. And it did look like, you remember the Fred Flintstones when he slides down the big plant eater ones that are really tall? Yeah, we all see Jurassic Park. Not the killer ones, but the ones that they're real big eaters. It looked like a little stick eye on one of the back. I swear it does. Or could it be an ant on a iguana? And my doctor friend with me, he goes, Robin, that's sort of true, but that doesn't tell me we want to dinosaur, okay? But you choose what you see, okay? I'll show it to y'all, okay? Okay, see what you see. But we had a big laugh about it, but I took a picture of it and we had a little fun with it. But I just find the pictographs really fascinating, right? Because these are drawings in caves and on rocks and stuff that these are Indians did. And even the ones that we've seen, there's a lot of them out in Utah, they would have horses, and horses, were not native in North America, they were brought in by the Spaniards, right? And so we know that. But there is one that I saw, and I'll show you a picture of it, that kind of struck me because it was, they seem to be very serious about these drawings. But one of them had 3 ghosts, with one of the ghosts in the middle higher than the other 2 ghosts. So having gone to church, what did I see? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I get like coach of my friend like, what's up with that? And that's kind of spooky. So we all interpret differently, but we had a lot of fun with that, looking at these things. But I'll show you that picture, I'll bring one to you. But so what do these things mean? Are they symbolic? Do they tell us something? We don't know. Okay. But there's people getting PhD out of figuring out how to interpret that. The Cro-Magnon, the big thing that led to the evolution of our culture was agriculture and growing food and not have to spend our whole day making food, right? So then you have time for leisure activities, right? It's believed the extinction of the large game animals and climate change may have dictated the lifestyle change that turned to agriculture, right? And then the evolution of all of our language, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the things that he makes a good point here that, and I've told this to some other teachers, and it really shocked me, and they really kind of opened their mind up this. But as a biologist, we know evolution occurs. I mean, the evolution of animals is real. We can't deny that. I think our different races is probably our basic example of evolution. In other words, how did a group of all from the same species, right, have our races? And I would say that, and the book says this too, I think they do a pretty good job here if you read it, saying that like our races are a group of humans that have lived in one environment for 50,000 years maybe, and they've evolved a little bit to adapt to that environment, but not to be a new species. Okay? And in your book, it makes a good point here, because one of the things that scares me is that if we look at this, Because I want to treat everybody the same, and the guy tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves, right? So we gotta love everybody the same. But what if one group has some advantage in certain things, like let's say engineering? Is there a race that's better engineers than others? I don't know. If I had to buy a car that ran for 20 years, I wouldn't buy a Ford, I'd buy a Toyota. Corolla. Lasts forever, right? I'm just saying, you know, and if y'all know anything about World War II, why did we win World War II? Did we have better tanks than the Germans? No. Germans had better tanks than us. We got the women and the men, and we made way more tanks than they had. We overwhelmed them with less, not as good a tank. I had a friend of mine went to church with me, he passed away now, he would argue that. He said, man, our tank's terrible. We just have more of them. He was the only man to call out two. They got hit, and he called out the bottom hole. Pretty like a hero. You know, he was here. But anyway, I mean, we overwhelmed them with numbers. And women going to the factory building, you know, building the stuff too. Of course, today you would fight with us, right? So we know that saying. But I just think that, like a testimony, they have more brown body fat than anybody else because they live in a really cold environment. People who live where there's more direct sunlight have darker skin. It don't make them smarter or dumber than anybody. It is what it is, right? We have a doctor on it. And the book even says that we have found no correlation of intelligence with these groups. Okay. However, you know who's kicking butt in America on that now on ACT? Asian Americans, whooping every other ethnic group. Maybe because they study more than we do than everybody else. I don't know, but they do better as a group. Now that still don't mean that there's some kid that can't do it, right? It's next trying, right? I don't know. So I'm real big. I'm going to give everybody equal share, but I don't know if I sure want to. I don't know if I want. I don't know if I personally believe in quotas. You know what I'm saying? Some of the stuff that we're doing, right? Because I mean, if we want to do quotas, I want to be the total white boy for the business. I'll do that. I'll take legal minimum 400,000. I'm there. I don't care about logo. Anyway, but I do think we're all equal and have equal should have equal opportunity. I'm willing to fight for that, right? But it makes kind of cool if we look at the different tribes and some of the other. All right, that's it. I think we covered most of the chapter. Okay. Everybody cool for next week? Any questions about this?